and Audit Committee board meeting this morning. Welcome from around the state of California. We are joining you virtually. We will conduct our business as we do each month. We will begin with public comment. First, again, let me bring the meeting to order. We're now going to turn, for public comment, we're going to turn it over to Mo, and Mo will handle the public comment. So go ahead, Mo.
Good morning. I'm going to be going over instructions for the public comment portion today. If you are logged into this meeting via Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature, typically located at the bottom of your screen, so that I can call on you to provide your comment. If you're dialing in by phone, pressing *9 will raise your hand and put you into our queue. Speakers will be called in the order that their hand is raised. Once you've been in the queue and your name is called, in the web meeting, please click the prompt on your screen to allow your microphone to be unmuted. On the phone, we will call on you by the last 4 digits of your phone number. At that point, you'll hear a message that you are being unmuted. Once unmuted, it will be your turn to speak. Please slowly and clearly say and spell your first and last name, and if applicable, state the organization you represent. After your introduction, each speaker is allotted 2 minutes to provide comments. Our court reporter is on the line to record these comments. If they need you to spell or repeat something, they may interject. You will hear a timer beeping once you go over your 2-minute time limit. At the end of your comment, we will disable your microphone. However, you are welcome to stay on the line to continue watching or listening to the meeting. If you do not wish to provide comment and simply want to watch the meeting, you can do so by logging onto our website, hsr.ca.gov, and looking for the link to our live stream, which is on our homepage. And that is the instructions for the board meeting. Thank you. And our first public comment is going to be David Schwagel.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, this is David, D-A-V-I-D, Schwagel, S-C-H-W-E-G-E-L with Apex, A-P-E-X, Civil Engineering. Spotlighting 3 of your outstanding consultants. First, 5 years ago, Precision Civil Engineering and the Valange Group came up with routes that worked, wrote the connected corridor study, and rallied the troops on Merced to Sacramento, all within the confines of an extremely skinny $1 million budget. Last February, we saw the fruits of their labor with all that outstanding stakeholder support during public comment at the Department of Food and Ag in Sacramento. Second, Harrison Associates has a leadership academy, and it shows with the tremendous spirit of camaraderie and teamwork their personnel bring to conferences and their social media posts on hot topics such as Black Lives Matter, as well as on topics related to diversity and inclusion within the engineering profession, things that we definitely want to propagate region-wide. Third, it was a pleasure to discuss with my colleagues from the Regional Economic Models Incorporated the side-by-side study that your early train operator, DB Engineering and Consulting, has underway, evaluating the merits and drawbacks of retaining the $6 billion here in the Central Valley versus reallocating it to the bookends. In our current COVID-19 era, where financial stewardship is being heavily scrutinized like never before, it is absolutely essential that we tout the success stories of our consultants and encourage top-notch financial stewardship practices moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
And just to repeat, if you're logged into the meeting via Zoom and would like to provide public comment, please use the raise your hand feature, typically located at the bottom of your screen, so that we can call on you to provide your public comment. Okay, sir. So it looks like we have Ronnie
That's
Rudolph.
it? Okay, thank you. Mo, did you say we have somebody else, or is that it?
Yeah, no, we do. Ronnie, if you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, it's not. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, yeah, my name is Ronnie Rudolph, Ronnie, last name Rudolph. One of my public comments that I want to give today is, per the state order of staying at home, I am trying to see. I know that at the last meeting they extended the public comments to July 31st, and wanted to see if that could get, or to give my comment of having that pushed, as a lot of especially in East LA, don't have access to these Zoom meetings or internet in general. So their option was the public library, which is now closed. So you guys are using the state to justify using the Zoom meetings as the reason why you guys don't have in-person meetings, but it should also be the other way around, which is to push the public comment until past the moratorium of when these public places stay open. That's all I have. Thank you.
Just a question.
Yes.
Don't we have access to these meetings by telephone as well?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, are there any other public comments?
Mo, are you still working on somebody else?
No, no one has raised their hand right now.
Okay. Give them another 10 seconds or so, and then we'll move forward. Okay, we will assume with that, Mo, that we have concluded the public comments. We think, Ronnie, is somebody else come on?
Sorry about that. We do have a Thomas Dorsey just raised his hand.
All right.
Will you also make any comment about how the Las Vegas high-speed rail project will have input or impact on this? That's all.
Thank you.
And then no new hands to put them in queue.
Okay, Mo, well, thank you very much. Then we will go ahead and conclude the public comment portion of our meeting this morning, and thanks those who did participate. For the court reporter, would you please note that both of my colleagues on the committee, Ernie Camacho and Nancy Miller, are with us, so we have a full complement of members. Moving on to our agenda items this morning, item number 1 is my comments. I'm going to lead those for today. We're certainly all aware of the conditions that we're working under in the state of California and the challenges that the state has. I think we'll talk a little bit more about that at the board meeting later today. With regards to agenda items, item number 2 is the item number 1 is the Finance and Audit Committee minutes from the last meeting. If we can have a motion for approval unless there are any changes.
I move approval.
Thank you. All right. Motion by Director Camacho and second by Director Miller. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Item number 2, my comments will pass on those. Item number 3 is the results of the audit office peer review. And there you are. Good morning, Paula.
Good morning.
We are ready for you.
Okay, thank you. On I'm Paula Rivera. I'm the Chief Auditor with the California High-Speed Rail Authority. And today I bring two items to the committee. The results of our external peer review and the audit plan for next fiscal year. Audits, we follow two different sets of audit standards, internal audit standards and governmental audit standards. Both sets of standards require us to develop a quality control system that ensures our audits comply with the standards. There's an internal component where annually we do a self-assessment. And then there's an external component where every 3 years we have an external entity come in, take a look at our processes, take a look at our work product, and determine whether or not it complies with the standards. Our external review was in February, and I'm proud to convey that they found our quality control systems were suitably designed and operating effectively. The reviewers had 2 recommendations that they identified in a separate management letter, and we agree with those recommendations and are working to implement them. The second thing that I have for today is next year's audit plan. We have 3 carryover audits that are work in process, and then we have 3 new audits that we're putting on the plan for this year. Grant management, procurement, and data validation. The audit plan is designed to be completed this fiscal year based on our current staffing levels.
Thank you, Paula. I know that the members on the committee have provided some input on the audit plan, and I don't know if they have any further comments at this point. These are both information items, as you've noticed. Committee members, do either of you have any questions or comments on Paula's report?
I have none.
Okay, thank you. Paula, I just want to congratulate you and your fellow auditors. I just remember in years past the difficulties not that we had in terms of doing good work, but not being qualified to do some of the things that we're able to do until you had your own peer reviews from others, and the results of them are not surprising to us. We are greatly appreciative for what you do for this committee and the authority as a whole, as well as for the people of the state of California. So thank you very much. It's highly appreciated by us.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate your support.
All right, we'll then move on to item number 4 today, which is the executive summary from our chief financial auditor. There you are, or officer, I'm sorry. Good morning, Brian. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and hello, board members. As always, presenting the...
Being at the office.
Yes, in the office with a tie. I have to do it at least once a month. Stay in practice.
Great.
And I trust that you are staying 6 feet apart.
Yes, we're in different offices here, even those of us that are in the office today. Yes, thank you. I'm working off the executive summary report that's on the screen now, and flipping to the next page of that, we start as always with the accounts payable, aging, and disputes report. The authority has not had an aged invoice in 32 months and has not made a penalty payment in 39 months. So that good record has continued through April. Our total disputes at the end of April were 6.1 million, which is an increase of 1.3 million from the prior month. The primary driver of that increase were 2 disputed invoices with the State Department of Forestry and Fire Protection that total 1.1 million. And this is an issue with some of the documentation. Sometimes we do, with our sister state agencies, struggle a bit to come to terms with what the invoices display and don't display. But I'm sure this is a newer one, so we'll work through this with the Department of Forestry and Fire Protection. Lower on that same page, we get to the cash management report. which shows our cash balances through April. As is indicated here, the Prop 1A bond proceeds in the bank, if you will, at the end of April were $343 million. Our cap and trade cash balance was $2,268 million. That, by the way, does not include the revenue from the February cap and trade auction, which was $153 million. We wait for an executive order from the Department of Finance to technically have the money available to us. They did that in the month of May. So we will add that $153 million to the cap and trade balance next month's reporting. I think as the board's aware, the May auction was very low for cap and trade revenues. We have seen we have a period of stability in that market until the May auction. There was a bill in 2017, AB 398, that had extended the cap and trade program through 2020 through 2030. And that added a period of stability we saw. And through that period, we were averaging about $720 million of auction proceeds annually from the program. And that translates to about $180 million a month on average. But the May auction was only $6 million coming to the authority, so that's obviously quite a reduction. Part of that is very explainable just from reduced consumption of fossil fuels. I saw one statistic that in January through April, consumption of gasoline fell about 40%. So it's definitely COVID-19 being a driver of that, but the market and how the market operates also sort of builds in even greater volatility during these shocks, like the COVID shock, because there is a secondary market where emitters of greenhouse gases can purchase credits that are already have been sold but not used yet. There's also a mechanism of consignment sales where some of the utilities that are engaged in energy or pollution reduction programs, those allowances are sold on consignment before the state auction begins. So there was in May certainly a demand for allowances and a need for allowances, but in the month of May, most of that demand was met from the secondary and also the consignment sales by the Air Board. We're going to continue to look at this closely going forward. This is one of our things we'll evaluate for the final business plan, and we'll have the August auction is the next one, so we'll continue to track all that closely. But again, as we head into the next fiscal year, we have a balance here of over $2.5 billion. We do have some additional authority to sell 1A bonds in the area of the bookend projects, like the LA Union Station project and the Caltrain electrification project, as well as for administration.
Brian, can I just interrupt for a second? I think I might have misunderstood. So from the May auction that you were just talking about, so those credits that weren't purchased, have they already been on any of those? Or they've been on the market and purchased since the date of the sale?
Let me try to answer, and if I don't get your question right, please let me know. But the auction credits that did not sell from the auction, they remain available for future sale. And what we saw in 2017 was we had a number of unsold credits prior to the extension of the program. And in fact, all of those allowances did end up selling in the subsequent couple of years. So I think that's probably the model we'll see here in the long term, that the unsold credits will be sold in the future and we'll receive that revenue. But certainly the short term remains more uncertain, such as the August auction, and we'll just have to keep monitoring that market sort of rebalancing itself, and also certainly driven by the level of recovery with the economy around the COVID crisis.
Okay. Yeah, that was the answer. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Ernie?
I wanted to ask one question. what is, because we don't know the future with this virus, and if we begin to have a pattern with the cap and trade, is there a plan B for that?
Well, that's something we'll, I think, have to work on with the certainly the longer term with the legislature and the administration, Department of Finance. Again, these cash balances are fairly healthy for the fiscal year and our needs in the fiscal year, but certainly our plan already is to go to the legislature next year and request a appropriation of additional Prop 1A bond funds for construction. So that certainly, as we get into the 21-22 fiscal year, we're certainly looking for those additional resources from additional 1A bonds. But in terms of the cash flow from the cap and trade auctions, we'll monitor that and try to get a better sense in the coming months of the COVID impacts to the program, and as those affect our cash flow.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you, Ernie.
Sure. So with that, if there's no further questions, I'll move on to the next slide. The next slide is our administrative budget and expenditures report. And through April, that's 83% of the fiscal year completed. The authority has spent $32.9 million, which is 56.4% of the total administration budget. And that is an increase year over year from what we had spent last April at this time of about $2.8 million, or 7.3% higher than last year at this point. The underutilization of budget is largely due to the vacancies and lower than expected operations, expenditures, and equipment purchases. The vacancy rate at the end of April was 18.8%. That was 51 vacancies out of 271 positions. That equates to total filled positions of 220. Some good news, though, over the last 7 weeks or so, through June or through today, another 10 of those positions have been filled on net. So we would instead have today 230 positions filled and 41 vacancies. I did take a longer term look at this. With the new positions filled over the past 7 weeks, our vacancy rate falls to 15%. And as a note, last year at this time, it was about 18%. And then due to budget approvals of converting some consultants to state staff, we had to fill 45 positions. And of course, our vacancy rate had jumped up, I believe, to around 29%. So we've more than made up and absorbed our new positions. And again, gotten our vacancy rate a bit lower than it was last year at this time, again, even with additional positions. I will note that the May revision of the budget, the governor's budget, we had included some additional state staff positions through our form to function activity, where we looked at really roles and responsibilities in the authority and to determine where a consultant was the best fit for the activity and where a state staff was the best fit. And through that exercise and another IT effort earlier in the year, we would be adding an additional 85 state staff in 2021 and offsetting that with a bit more than 100 consultant reduction as well. With that, I'll move on to the next slide.
Brian, could you just tell us just briefly what your sense is with regards to the austerity program that is being employed by the state in response to the COVID-19 and financial implications? How is all of that going to, as you see it now, how is it, and how do you perceive it continuing to affect the authority and its mission?
Yeah, well, we still don't have final detail on that, but you may have seen it was reported that the major state union, SEIU, has apparently reached agreement with the administration on a furlough program that would equivalent about 2 furlough days a month, lasting for 2 years. And we have some employees that are part of that bargaining unit, and then others that are part of other bargaining units. But that probably sets an expectation for generally how the salary and wage savings will run. I think again we'll get more information from the statewide Human Resource Department on how they're implementing this for the excluded and non-represented employees. And ultimately, I believe Department of Finance will do an executive order to reduce our budget a bit to score those savings.
Okay. So how is it already been contemplated, the implications or impacts of this in our 2021 budget?
Not specifically, because again, the package hasn't been fully concluded between the administration and the bargaining units. And so again, when that is completed, the process would be Department of Finance would calculate how many positions we have of different types and what our savings would be. And again, they would take an executive action to reduce our budget to keep us within that new level. So that has not occurred yet, but again, with our situation of adding new state staff, we're going to be doing that over time as well. So it shouldn't affect our ability to hire. And to date, the administration has not implemented any kind of a hiring freeze or something like that that might be a challenge for filling positions. And I think in our situation, of course, we're generating savings in these areas where we're hiring new state staff and reducing consultant expenditures. So I believe we'll be able to go forward and fill our newly authorized positions.
Okay, thank you.
This next page is the summary of our capital outlay budget. And as is indicated here, our expenditures in the month of April for the design build packages of construction in the Central Valley totaled about $60 million. Our overall monthly expenditures for capital were $129 million. The detail on the bottom of this sheet breaks it out by category. One of the reasons that we had higher expenditures this month were a $19.5 million expenditure on local assistance, which is our bookend projects here. The Caltrain project came in with some invoices that we paid. Our preliminary look at May looks like our expenditures will be up a bit. It's looking like about $68 million in the Central Valley construction for the month of May. Again, those are preliminary numbers, and we'll report the final numbers at next month's meeting.
A quick question, Brian, if I may. What do you, trying to forecast forward, what number should we be reaching now to spend in order to meet the ARA agreement with the feds?
Yeah, I might answer that by discussing an item that's in the full board agenda. We are the full board for the adoption of the 2021 budget, and the overall capital outlay budget is proposed at $2.9 billion. Of that, about $2.4 billion is Central Valley work. If you break it down into the construction contracts, design build contracts in terms of both the current contract and contingency that's budgeted for that purpose in the fiscal year, those expenditures would rise to about $110 million a month. So again, that's looking currently, last couple months, we're seeing about $65 million on average, and would see that growing to about $110 million next year.
Thank you.
Okay, go on to the next slide, please. So these slides provide first the total expenditures with forecast. To date, this is really 2006 through April of 2020. The project has expended $6.9 billion, and the majority of that, 77%, has been on construction activity. Looking to the bottom half of the page, this is reporting the state match to ARA and where we are on that. Again, the Federal Railroad Administration approved match to date is $477 million, and they have disengaged from reviewing our submittals since 2018. We have, through April, submitted an additional $938 million of invoices that qualify for ARA match credit. I can also report that this week we'll be submitting another $120 million invoice package for ARA match that's really based on the 3 design build contractor invoices for the work they've been doing in recent months.
So that, in addition to what you've got in process, takes us up to about 90% of the match requirement.
That's correct. And about 1.5 billion of that will then be on the federal side. So that will be submitted to them.
Okay.
Next slide, please. So this is our contracts and expenditures report. Through April, we had 195 active contracts with 7.6 billion in value. Our small business rate was 21.4%, which has been flat for some time. It's down slightly from last month, but about the same as we had 1 year ago. Over 5 years, it's up about 5%. So we do see some longer term progress in the small business utilization rate. Why don't we go on to the next page? And the last slide is the use of contingency. Of course, the May 2019 baseline budget included a large contingency, and sort of the third to last column there at the top shows the total contingency at 3.6 billion when we started in May of 2019. We've utilized or assigned about 1.1 billion of that contingency, leaving about 2.5 billion remaining. We didn't have any reportable contingency use for this reporting month. Everything was under 25 million. The total for a smaller contingency assignments was 27 million, and that's indicated in the chart here as well. That concludes the financial executive summary report.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions from Nancy or Ernie?
None.
Okay. I think that I really I want to compliment you again on the expenditure report. The breakout is incredibly helpful, Brian. Thank you very much.
Great.
All right, with no other questions for you, you've escaped, and we'll now move on to the Central Valley status report. If Joe's, and there you are, Joe. Good morning.
Morning, sir. How are you today?
We're fine, Joe, and yourself?
Wonderful in Sacramento.
Good.
I think 3 degrees colder than Fresno. I was down there yesterday.
All right. Thank you for pointing that out to the people around the state. All right, you're on, Joe.
Yes, sir. Let's go to page 2 of the Central Valley. Let me just highlight, give you a historical context with regards. This is the April 20 data. Now, in April, we had approximately 2 weeks of rain, which define this. And it was also in April that the initial COVID impacts were starting to emerge. So that's the content of this report. I will also talk about where the trends are into May and progressing into June as we advance here. I'll just go right to each of the CP packages. For the contractor, basically invoice for this $60 million invoice, which is slightly over the projection of 57. What you're seeing is a little bit of a drop, again, as a result of the rain and of the COVID impact. CP1, they were invoiced 15 million to their compared to their 18 million projected, $3 million less. However, though, there is a good news story on CP1. As a result of the PG&E agreement that we stroked a month before, that you're seeing that there is substantial utility work that is underway throughout the remainder of that alignment. This is going to result in sites opening up in the near future, as in to allow us to focus on the critical path, which is the 3 downtown bridges, the type 2 bridges that go over Fresno and Ventura. So all good news here. If you've been down in downtown, you've witnessed the extensive amount of utility relocation that's going on. Also, another good news with regards to the utility of CP1 is that the AT&T work required for the relocation of the Jensen trenches and the Golden State is ahead of schedule and advancing very well. Moving to construction package 2-3. 2-3 continues to grow exponentially. As you can see, that the contractor invoice for $35 million. This has become the central focal point, and rightfully so, because this is where the critical path is. You're seeing that work is building in the 2-3 area, and sites are opening. Basically, this is we're able to open the Fowler Avenue and the Dover Avenue sites. Currently, 87 utility relocations have been done. We are also doing advanced work on another 24 in CP2-3. CP4. CP4 is basically has achieved its what I call its aura steady state. You can see that slightly under, but it's crouched up to nearly its 2% invoice. Its down was $10 million result of the rain not being able to work out on the guideway. But you're seeing it achieve a steady state, hovering in approximately about that $15 million monthly invoice rate, which is what it needs to be on for our target. This is kudos with regards to the issues that have been worked out predominantly in environmental. There is a few left key real estate agreements that we need in CP4, but work is advancing very well. The Wasco downtown viaduct, which is the major structure, is well underway and progressing very well. Page 5. I'll skip over real property. I'll touch on that in the summary. Page 5, you can see that right now with regards to Ernie's question, with regards to expectations to be able to achieve our current expectation is slightly over, and we're progressing on that projected curve as to achieve ARA. Right now, that $4 billion represents the current contract values. Next slide. You can see here too that we are working towards it. You can see the next slide is what needs to be achieved towards ARA, and that is approximately that $6 billion target. The delta between the 4.2 and the 6.1, approximately half of that is the award of the track and systems contract, which is underway. That procurement is underway, progressing towards a November, December award. So we are closing. Also, too, in this month, we have awarded a couple major mods that are inclusive of getting all the scope accounted for in the CPs.
Joe, just to make it kind of simplistic, then, what do we need to, in order to reach ARA, what do we need to be spending on construction going forward?
Right now, sir, we are spending right now what we need to be spending. We're currently right now, as you realize, this is an S curve. We are plotted it out with regards to a plan. It is not linear. If you were to do it in a linear approach, it'd be approximately about, as Brian alluded to, a little bit over 110 million a month. right? But the plan is to open sites to increase our increase our expenditures, and also to, as we work in these RBSs, you're going to see some of the type 2 structures, which are the non-HSR carrying structures, push slightly into that 22 frame, as in to allow us then to finish those structures that are going over and to focus our construction activities on the type 1, as to be able to accommodate the tracking systems, getting the tracking systems down.
Okay. You, just to follow up on your comment with regards to the RBS, I know that you didn't ask, and the expectation was for June. I am guessing that you're still in working on those, or maybe revising them again in response to issues that have been presented, certainly in part by the COVID-19 pandemic. First, is that true? And then secondly, is it also true that are you still in the process of completing the RBSs?
True, and true in the latter stages of the formulation of the schedules. It will be, there is a series of, as you're aware of, to align the project completion dates that are stated in the RBS to the contract completion dates. Will have to be the award of contract modifications, which will take additional time to be able to award out. So we are in the last stages. My anticipation is that the final rev of CP23 is coming in today, along with the adjustment to the right-of-way schedules. We are now tracking. We have reset what I call one of the rules of baseball. One of the rules of the program is that we're tracking all right-of-way to the late start or the late finish date. The late finish date is the last day to acquire something, as to avoid opening up another critical path on the project. So right-of-way agreements, environmental, and all the contractor actions are now co-linked with regards to predecessor successor logic in those RBSs, and we are tracking jointly to make sure that we can minimize and eliminate impacts.
Joe?
Yes, sir.
The number that you gave us of 110, I think they said, Brian said it was may have been a little higher than that, but each month as we don't do the 110, that number will get greater going forward. Is there a plan B to accelerate some of the construction? And if so, is there a plan in place to look at how we would do that?
So I have no plan B. I just have plan A, which is work the RBSs. The RBSs increase basically the expenditure rates as to compensate for us if the average not expending out. We have all activities accounted for into those RBSs. If we're able to deliver the 700 plus parcels on time, and we're able then to achieve the RBSs, right, we will then glide into ARA. Now with that stated, let me tell you this. Yeah, it's not going to be easy. Okay. And that's clearly amplified here by this chart that's in front of you, right? You can see the duration of time that it's taken basically to execute $2.5 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Now you must look at the pace and tempo of construction and activity, as then to go from that 2.5 up to 6.2.
Mm-hmm.
It is horrendous. Okay.
That's right.
It is going to be difficult. Now, we have the RBSs in place, right? Again, that clearly link successor predecessor activity to all of the state actions, all the contractor actions, to include the remaining agreements, environmental, right-of-way designs, as to be able to do that. We track that weekly right now, as in to push these. Our biggest focus right now, you're seeing it, is with that first order work, those utilities. Getting these utilities cleared out of the way for the first time, as in to be able then to let the contractors then advance work, right, throughout their alignments. It's worked, as you can see in CP4. As a result of this very focused effort, you can see that CP4 is now on its, what I call, is achieved this inflection point of construction, the gradient of construction, and is now progressing very well. 2-3 has come up dramatically as a result of this. You see that we have freed sites. Its production is just, if you track the history of 2-3 and the amount of work that's happening down there right now, it is exponential. CP1 is still hobbled, still shackled by these utility relocations, because to TPZP's credit, they took all of their easy work up front, right, with regards to not having to move those utilities and addressing a lot of those complex first order work. Now we have that work, that first order work is well underway. If you go downtown Fresno, you can see the magnitude throughout the whole alignment of that first order work. The key here is get the first order work done, be able to construct that downtown chute fly, which is basically in back of the train station, and then that allows us then to start those remaining long structures as into glide into ARA. The RBS is verified that ARA is achievable, but extremely difficult.
All right. So, well, with the work that we're going to be doing in these next few months, we're going to want to obviously take a hard look at the detail of that and the ramp up of the monthly spends that you believe are reasonable, so that we can satisfy certainly ourselves and our colleagues as to our capacity with regards to meet the R requirement.
Understood, sir.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Let's move forward. Unless you had anything else on that, Ernie.
No, sir. I'm fine. Page 7. Okay, what you see here is that 60 is a slight downtick. It is reflected again of the rain and of the COVID, right? But in May, as Brian already reported, the expectations is about a 68. So you see it's climbing back up. We're back on step. And then in June, it's going to exceed probably $70 million is our expectation. So incrementally, we keep headed in the right direction. These are strong indicators that the alignment is opening and that work is steadily progressing and building. And the majority of this work here, like I said, is good work in the sense that it is focused on that first order work. Slide 8. This is another strong, and this is the daily average of workers that are on the site per week. Right now, this is showing in April, we were at 750. Currently, as I reported, this is a weekly that we track on. We're slightly over 900, right, in the present, and we are growing right now. My expectation that by July we will be at approximately 1,000. So all good, strong indicators. If I was to look at quote unquote stock market indicators of health of the economy, the health of the CPs, this is a good, strong indicator along with the invoice growth that you are seeing. Okay, right here, this is a statement. These projections were go back to December of the previous year. They're outdated. What's happening right now is, obviously, if we had to these projections, it would be much more helpful. But right now, with the RBSs and what we're projecting to, there is no noted out there critical impacts that we've not been able to overcome. So that's what we're able to progress work, and work is progressing accordingly. Construction progress summary, I've already touched on that on page 10. If there's any specific questions, I'll be happy to answer questions. These basically plan to open structures will be adjusted in accordance to the new RBSs coming out. and they'll have better alignment and better correlation to the schedules. Now, page 11. This is a major indicator. I'm going to refer back to page 4, the highlights on page 4. We're going to stay on page 11. Okay. What you're seeing here in the first chart here, parcel acquisition summary chart. Okay, there's a good news story here, is that as a result of design and working the solutions, we've been able to decrease the number of right-of-way parcels by 14. In April, we acquired 3, and we were able to deliver 6 parcels. The difference between acquire and delivered is that acquired is the authority owns them, but yet we have not yet delivered them to the design build contractors. When we say delivered, it's delivered to the design build contractors. So we're able to deliver 6. Now, if you go to slide 12, what this slide is a very, very significant slide. Each of the histographs are not just linked to mere quantity, they're linked to specific parcels. So in April, when we say 13 parcels, they are 13 known parcels. Thus, when you see that we are delivering out parcels, orange parcels, into the June through December, you can see that we're delivering parcels. Those are accounting for parcels that are due in those months. Okay, so we not only track to the mere quantity, we track to when we need to deliver those parcels as not to impact the critical path. So as you can see in April, we have achieved the 13. There's no right-of-way impacts noted in the month of April. Okay. This is also too, if you slide now to slide 13. Okay, and slide 15, you can see that we have delivered 13 railroad parcels, which is a good news story. These are parcels that are in front of us, right? And the key to right-of-way, as you can guess, is this, is not only maintaining with regards to what you need in the month that we're reporting, but also working in front of you as in to try to eliminate some of these spikes and move them down and lower them down. Do work in the present that allows you to make sure that when you reach a spike, that it's at a level that you can then deliver within that remaining month. Slide 14. Slide 14 deals basically what we call Tier 1 land conveyances. Let me restate the definition of Tier 1 land conveyances. Tier 1 land conveyances are those, they are predecessor activities. We must convey the land rights prior to the relocation of the utilities. Okay, this was prior to the 6-month delay that PG&E gave us. It was in that group. Okay, PG&E was this group. As a result of PG&E suspending that requirement, we've been able to basically give them proof of ownership of land, allowing us then to advance that work with regards to the PG&E utilities. A great help. You can see that we are on track in achieving the remainder of the big 4, Semper Gas, SoCal, and those things, as in to maintain that there is no critical impacts with regards to land conveyance reported within this month. All good news. Third-party agreements. Third-party agreements are progressing very well. I can tell you in present right now, all these third-party agreements basically are complete, with the exception on page 15 of the Madeira Valley Water Company, which is right now Henry Perea is going to give us a little bit of help there, hopefully. This ties predominantly, this is an issue that links back to Road 27, being able to move that water line in 27. So hopefully we can get that agreement. There's a meeting scheduled for today as in to be able to work on that issue. But all the rest of these things in the present and in terms of June have been basically wrapped up and completed. Page 16. The semi-tropic agreements on the bottom have also, with regards to the present, have been completed. Very, very good news, progressing very well with these third-party agreements. Environmental clearances here. There are no environmental clearances are all on schedule. There is no impacts with regard to environmental issues, and the cooperation and coordination with CDFW to critical path. We have eliminated and focusing on getting the right environmental permits, incidental permits are progressing very well. This takes us to the summary of CP1. As in my tradition, I will not go through each of the CP package. I will go to page. I will direct you to the change orders, as in to give you a summary of the change orders. Page 19, please. Page 19, you can see that there's $7 million worth of change orders executed. The predominant one was $5 million, which was a mitigation strategy for Avenue 7, being able to haul in fill, wait for fill to be excavated out of the trenches. Another good news story here is that small $78,000 change order that is 297 on top of the page. This is work that's allowing us then to incorporate what we deem as the missing 2.5 miles of alignment that was currently in SR 99 project that was removed from that project, incorporating that into the TPZP contract as to get all known scope into under contract as in advance towards ARA. Switching to page 28, which is CP23. You can see here that we've executed approximately $13.2 million change orders. This is predominantly, these are mitigation efforts with regards to the scale, with regard to the schedule, as to overcome out of sequence work. This goes to Ernie's question. Joe, what are you doing to keep an advanced pace? This is it right here. We are working with a contractor to come up with strategies as to take what would be stalled work and advance that work as to offset these basically mitigation with regards to ongoing time impact. Moving now to page 37, which is CP4. You can see we've executed one change here. This is, again, another mitigation strategy to allow the contractor to advance work early around a obstacle, predominantly right away. What you have here is the moving of fill from a different location, right, as to allow work to commence and to keep pace. That wraps up my summary, sir, of the Central Valley. I'm open to questions or comments.
Ernie, do you have anything?
I was just going to say thank you, Joe, and keep up the good work on the right of way. I know that's a tough nut to crack, but you're doing a good job. Thank you.
I tell you, I am blessed. Jennifer Loudon and Richard, we just hired in another deputy for her, are doing amazing work. Very blessed to have the team, and also Russell Burgess from WSP. It's just had a huge influence on right away. Great people.
The only thing I wanted to say, Joe, was I wanted to acknowledge Diane Gomez and her leaving and all the hard work that she's done and with the community and for high-speed rail.
Yeah, absolutely, Ernie. And that is really amplified in those agreements that I highlighted here. The closeout of those agreements have been led by Diana. Without her influence, without her access to the community and her leadership, we would never got these agreements. She is phenomenal, and she will be greatly missed.
Yes.
Thanks for the comment, Ernie, and for your response to that, Joe. Joe, I think that one thing that we can just tell you, first of all, I'm very happy that you're feeling blessed with the responsibilities you got, because that makes us feel much better. But I must tell you that what we would like to make sure as much as possible, and to whatever extent that we have any ability to influence, we want to make sure that you've got all the resources that you need in order to accomplish the job and to meet the ARA deadline that is before us at the end of 2022. So I'm not going to ask you that right now, but I would certainly want this committee to know if there is anything you need that you don't have or that you want in order to help move this work forward at a pace that we can increase a level of confidence that we are going to successfully accomplish that timeline. So unless there is something that just strikes you that you don't have, that we might have some influence on making sure you get, I'd like to have you keep that in mind at every meeting or anytime you have any interaction with any of us.
Understood, sir. I look forward to coming in online and working with you and Brian Kelly as we work towards the next business plan to reset the baseline and to reset the program. And that includes basically implementing full implementation of the RBSs.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Nancy, do you have anything else before we adjourn today's meeting?
No, I do not. Thank you, Tom.
Okay, thank you. Ernie?
No, nothing. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, Joe, thank you very much for the report. And Brian, before you, and Brian Kelly, that's on the sidelines here, but I'm sure with us. So for all of you in California who have joined in, thank you very much for both your participation and your interest in watching and listening to what we have talked about today. But we wish you all the best and your families through the COVID-19 and pandemic that we are winding our way through, and we will look forward to hearing from you and seeing you next month. With all of that, then this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much, and we'll be back with our board meeting this morning at 11 a.m. So it's not right after this, but it will be at 11 a.m. this morning, and hope you all can join us then. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.